to the Colorado Avalanche in fourth spot. Man, have they turned things around big time these last few weeks. A point behind the Minnesota Wild now, 53 points in 45 games. They've rattled off 5 wins in a row. They're getting healthier, and I don't think any of us are surprised by the way that the Avalanche have turned things around. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about this team missing the playoffs, and they're not missing the playoffs. That's just not happening. Defending Stanley Cup champions. Case, your grade for the Avs?
Yeah, you would think based off how I graded Dallas and Winnipeg and Minnesota that I would grade these guys pretty poorly because fourth in this division is not where we expected to see these guys. But I have still given them a B because they've been pretty damn unlucky this year, and to be 1 point out of a playoff spot, that deserves a B in my mind. When you look at this team, they've struggled to score, and the very clear statistic here is that they're fourth last in goals above expected at minus 15.26 goals, and they're the second lowest shooting percentage in the league. Well, Nathan MacKinnon is back, so that's changed. They've definitely turned things around since he's been back. I know Makar just went down with an injury, but I expect these guys to score a lot more goals now that it isn't only Mikko Rantanen. But yeah, they have a lot of positives that are pointing towards them coming back and being a playoff team and maybe being that second seed. They aren't up there when it comes to total games lost due to injury, but the stat that really matters here, and that back to that unlucky comment, is that they are fourth in highest in cap hit of injured players. So the players that are missing games are important players. It's McKinnon, it's Landeskog, who is going to be skating after the NHL All-Star break, so he should be back by the end of the year. Francouz, their goaltender, was hurt for a while, so they were running with only Georgiev, who's been a backup in his career. Well, Francouz is back, and he's played great since he's returned. He's my fantasy guy now. I love him. But yeah, and then fourth best in Corsi, and they've been very good defensively so far. They've got the third least goals against despite only having Georgiev, and now have their best goalie back. So that's going to continue. Good defense, scoring, returning, luck evening out. That all points towards this team being a playoff team and probably second in this division.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a playoff team. At the start of the year or in the preseason when we were doing our rankings, we all unanimously had them finishing first in the Central Division. Not that it was a foregone conclusion that they would be the best team in this division, barring any injuries, of course. But, we thought they were good enough to get back to that same spot despite losing some key forwards. Like the one that comes to mind is Nazem Kadri, of course, not having him down the middle anymore. That's not nothing to lose your second line center on the team that just won the cup. So we knew they were going to be good, but then injuries happened, right? Through no fault of their own. They're now sitting below where we expected them to be, in the fourth spot in the Central Division. Monty Puck has them with a 66% chance to make the playoffs. I think, anyone in the hockey world right now, if they were betting people, would bet on the Colorado Avalanche to make the playoffs because they know what this team is made of up and down the lineup. And, that 66%, I think, is almost 99% because this team is pretty damn good and the reigning Stanley Cup champions. So I'm not worried about them, but because they're sitting in fourth and not first, I have to give them a B- just because their outcome right now in the standings is lower than they should be, period. And, you can point to man games lost. You can point to an interesting stat case that I've never heard that you mentioned was the salary loss. That's kind of a cool way to look at it. I've never really heard that before. You can point to all that stuff, but at the end of the day, every team gets unlucky to a certain extent, and great teams are able to battle through that and still make the playoffs. And we're seeing that Colorado now has sort of weathered the storm And now that McKinnon's back, Landeskog's on his way back, Makar will be back after, about a week or so, maybe in the next few days. They've weathered the storm. It's pretty much over at this point, and they are on a tear. So I'm not worried about Colorado, but because of where they are in the standings, have to give them a B-.
I'll give them a B. I'll go with your grade, Case. I just think that this team is on a roll, and with their recent stretch, that they deserve this grade, and that it wasn't easy, everything that they went through, and again, they're only a point behind Minnesota, so they could certainly pass them, get into third, continue this run that they're on, not necessarily with a bunch of wins in a row, but go 10-2 in their next 12 or whatever. They could certainly do that and really work their way up this division, possibly into second, like you mentioned their Case. So one's very glaring need still for this team, and that is the second line center spot. They've been trying to figure that out all year long, it seems. They've been trying JT Compher, who was very good for them in the playoffs last year, but I think he's more suited in the 3-hole or on the wing. Alex Newhook as well, who has been better lately. He's got 10 goals already on the year. His career high is 13, and so he is set to pass that this season, hopefully. But they will be looking at a center at the deadline for sure, whether it's Jonathan Toews. They would certainly be in on Bo Horvat, no question. So that is a big need for them. And then the goaltending. I think that Georgiev has been all right, but Francouz has always been quietly very good the last few years for this hockey team, and getting a couple of defensemen back would be huge as well. So with the recent stretch and just some of the adversity that they've battled through, it certainly didn't come right away when Nathan McKinnon in particular came back into the lineup, but this has been a really good run when a couple of weeks ago a lot of people were saying that the defending Stanley Cup champions were out of it, and now they're back into it. So B for the Avs.
Couldn't you see the Avs getting a guy like Jonathan Toews, putting him in the second line center position where, on a lot of teams, if you were to acquire Toews for the rumored ask is just a third-round pick, you're likely not playing him second line minutes. But couldn't you see Colorado acquiring him for a second or third-round pick, sticking him in the second line center spot, and getting the absolute most out of that player at this point in his career? Because
Absolutely.
to me, that just seems like exactly what would happen if they get a player like Toews or like a Ryan O'Reilly, for example. Imagine a reunion there between those two.
Hey, it's possible for sure.